Here we go, lesson 7.6. Got 3 examples and a couple reminders. We're looking for a GCF. When we factor, you want to be on the lookout for something simple that we talked about a couple last week, a couple days ago, lessons, that if you can find a number that you can divide into all 3 of your terms, do so. It's going to make your problems easier and simpler to tackle. So if we pull out the 3 from each of these terms, you're left with a w squared, we're left with a minus 4w, and a plus 2. Now this inside stuff may still need to be tackled, but at least it's going to be simpler to work with. Not only look for numbers, but also look for the variable. So notice the 1, the 12, and the 35, nothing there to divide through by, but I can divide them each by n. Again, put the n in front. Remember the rules about exponents. We subtract those, so we get n squared minus, again, the n to the first divided into the n squared just gives you 12n. And then here we end up with just a 35. Okay, so that's one way to make the problem a little bit simpler, is see if you can look for a GCF. We are going to factor and solve here. Notice there's got an equation, so it equals 0. That's good news. But the bad news is we've got a 4. In the past that was always a 1. Have no fear though, we can still tackle this. We're just going to build a nice little rectangle. Put the 4x squared in the usual spot. Put the 3 here. And before you dive in, take a moment and think about the 4 and the 3. What are the factors that give us these? Well, 3 is certainly easier to work with because there's only one option. It's prime, 1 times 3. We don't have to worry about the negative 1 times the negative 3, even though that is positive 3. Because I look up here and I got all positives, pluses. So that tells me we can rule that out. For the 4, we've got, well, 1 times 4 and 2 times 2. So we've got 2 possibilities for the 4. Let's start at the back end, though. Let's put our 1 and 3 in there, because those are pretty much set. Now let's talk about what would create the 4x squared. Well, let's go 2x and 2x. So we fill in the other boxes to check this out. So 2x times 3, 2x times 1, bummer, 2x plus 6x is not 13x, it's only 8. So we got to backtrack here and try something other than 2x and 2x. Now the 1 and 3 again is stuck, but I could put the 4 and the 1x in. And so here we would get 3x, and here we would get 4x. Bummer. Still doesn't work out, because 4x and 3x give me 7 and not 13. It feels like we're stuck and there's no solution. But if we switch the 1 and the 4 around, yes, we do end up with a different possibility, because now I take 4x times 3 and I get 12x, and then here we have a 1x, and 12x and 1x is 13x, so we've solved it. Ooh. 4x plus 1 times x plus 3 equals 0. Don't forget to use those parentheses, set it equal to 0, and then look at each problem separately. So 4x plus 1 equals 0. Add negative 1 to both sides, divide through by 4. So there's one answer. X is negative 1/4. X plus 3 equals 0, so x equals negative 3. Okay, I went through that kind of fast. But you can see how you can get two different answers there from that tricky polynomial. All right, problem number 2. What's different this time? Well, we got a few more negatives in our problem. That's going to create some more possibilities. But if you strategize carefully, put the things that you know in. The 2x squared goes there. Don't forget there's got to be a negative 7. And then come over here and make a plan. So 1 times 2x is probably the only way you're going to get the 2. The 1 and the 7, sorry, the negative 7 could be achieved with making one of the 2 factors negative. All right, so let's put the 1x and the 2x down first this time. And now let's go with a negative 7. Well, if I put the 7, let's say here, 1 here, let's strategize a little bit. That would give me 14 and 1. Well, 14 plus 1 is a negative 5. So let's flip these around and put the 7 here and put the 1 here. Now we've got a 2 and a 7, and that's good news, because I think I can make 2 and 7 give me negative 5. If we make the 7 negative, so that means that's got to be 7. Again, don't forget there's got to be an x here, and there's got to be an x here too. All right, I think we've strategized it out. So my factors are 2x minus 7 and 1x plus 1. Setting them both to equal to 0, 2x minus 7 equals 0, so 2x equals 7, so x equals 7 halves. Or x plus 1 equals 0, so x equals negative 1. Circle your 2 answers. Off you go. Last problem. All right, here we got a couple of problems. Number 1, we see a lot more negatives. Number 2, there's a 2 there. That's a problem. All right, so let's fix the 2 first of all, because that's the most important thing. It should be a 0. So I'm going to add negative 2 to both sides. So we've got a negative 4y squared, a negative 10y, and a negative 6. Or in this case, a minus 6. Now I notice that everything can be divided by negative 1. That is, I can make everything opposite. And since I've got a 0 on this side, the opposite of 0 is just 0. So that's not going to change. So let's just flip all the signs right now. This is going to make our life easier. The last thing I noticed before I dive in and factor is that I can divide them all by 2. See that? So I'm going to put a 2 in front and say y squared plus 5y plus 3 equals 0. Now I still need to work with this. Whoops, and I made a mistake. Did you see it? That first term should not be just y squared, but a 2y squared. All right. Now, let's come over here and build ourselves a box to factor 2y squared and 3. And again, we're looking for 5y. Well, why did I put a 3 there? That should be a 2y squared. So we have a 2y times a 1y. 1 times 3. Again, I don't think I want the 3 here because that's going to give me a 6. right? And I'm not going to be subtracting because this is all positives here. So I'm going to delete the 3 and put the 3 down here and put the 1 up here. That gives us a 2y and a 3y, and 3y plus 2y is 5y. So I think we've factored it. Now again, don't forget about the 2. Except now we've broken it up into 1y plus 1 and 2y plus 3. Yeah? Again, that 2 initially was that 2 that we pulled out. Okay. Finish with the problem. So y plus 1 equals 0. Again, I don't need to worry about the 2. The 2 cannot be 0. So only these two things can be 0. Things, I should call them terms. So 2y equals negative 3, so y equals negative 3/2. All right. Good luck in your homework. Hopefully you can solve these little puzzles.